Okay.
Okay. All right. Happy Veterans Day, you guys. Aleseia Saunders and Samire Elhouty, thank you for spending your Veterans Day with me and for running for delegate for our local. So this is an opportunity. We're missing, of course, Maria Asturias. She is uh, busy doing some personal things. We'll try to catch her on a video. But while we have you all, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running? We'll start with Samir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shreya. So, everyone, my name is Samir Elhouty. Originally from California, lived in Texas for a bit, and
We're
I have been
neighbors.
with. We were neighbors for what, almost 9 years or something.
Yeah, man.
So, yeah. So we were both with OCR, and I was a civil rights attorney for OCR, OCR's Dallas office, since 2016. And handled and resolved several hundred cases there involving sexual harassment, racial harassment, things like that, different treatment. And I've always admired unions. I've always understood the importance of unions. So, as soon as I had the chance to be a part of a union, I joined immediately. So back in 2016, when I was first hired by the Department of Education, I joined. Back then, I think it was Local 3897, and I joined immediately. And after my first year, immediately signed up for a leadership position, became treasurer, and then that translated to Local 252, where I was treasurer for several years, VP of the Western region, and I was a delegate in 2024 for a national convention. And you can stop me if I'm getting ahead
Yeah.
on anything,
No,
but
that's okay. I'm actually wearing the
um,
T-shirt, I think, from that national convention.
oh
So that
yeah,
was yeah, that was in Las Vegas. That was a doozy. So it's a pleasure. As you probably can tell, Samir and I have been working together for a while. In fact, Samir is so much of a unionist. When I was feeling like, oh, this is too much, I might have to drop out. He was just like, no, you gotta. When we lost our contract in 2018, 2 weeks after both Samir and I became leaders in the former local 3897, I was like, well, let's wrap it up. We don't have a contract. And so, I want to thank you publicly, Samir, for pushing us forward. And for those who don't know, Samir, when he was Western Regional VP, he was also on our remote work bargaining team. So there's a picture I would show to new employees, mainly because I was like, we had cute t-shirts, they match. But but and remote work, of course, was a benefit to us all on this call. And so I won't talk too much. We have another star, another person we have to introduce to our members, Aleseia Saunders. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Excuse me, sorry. I'm Aleseia Saunders, and I've been with Ed a little under 5 years. Actually, I reached 5 years. Oh no, I reached 5 years in September. Time flies, but I've been a Fed for 23 years. So Ed is my sixth agency, and I've just been yes. I master an agency and move on. That's how I was trained up. But so I've been an advocate of the union since inception of my federal career with DLA, with Army, with HUD, with USDA, with GSA, you name it. I've been quite an advocate for the union. And actually, when I was at USDA with rural development, I served as the interim secretary. When one of the secretaries departed the agency, I served as the interim until they found a permanent placement. But Ed's union, his reputation preceded me starting with the agency because I worked with some employees at GSA that actually worked with FSA at some point, and they talked about the union and how they missed that, unity and how strong it was when they used to work at Ed. So I actually already knew about you all before I came on board. So naturally, because I am such an advocate, the first thing I did was say, hey, how do I sign up to be with the local here at Ed? And here I am. I work in under the office, OFO as a with contracts and acquisition management. So I'm a contracting officer in 1102, and that's what I've been doing for 23 years.
Well, I just want to say I'm so glad you signed up because if the first thing you did was sign up, the second thing you did was provide us with, valuable information. We received notice in OFO that they were taking away y'all's cell phones. And I was like, oh, people got cell phones? Because in OCR, we didn't have that. But I would just, we reached out to you and your colleagues who were impacted, and you were just like, oh, this is the deal. This is what you should ask for. This is not a big deal. Or some of us are keeping our phones. But you really helped educate me and Brittany Coleman, who I think served on that bargaining for the cell phones and OFO, educated us OCR folks about what's going on in OFO and kept us informed. So you've always done that since you've been in this local, and I want to thank you for that. And again, thank you, again for being a delegate. So Samir and I broached on this. Samir says he was a delegate before. Maria Asturias was also a delegate. We were delegates together for the first time. My first time at, the big part of the delegate's role is to represent the local at national conventions. I'm wearing the shirts. And then at our district caucuses. And I remember that being so heady because I didn't know what to expect. Who are these people? Why are they talking? So I wanted to see if Samir can tell us a little bit about his experience as a delegate, what he learned, and why he agreed to run again as delegate.
Yeah, it was a great experience. It was an educational experience. It was an inspirational experience. I think there were something like 1,500 people in one giant room, um, and battling it out. I mean, it got heated. It got heated a few times, and people, weren't there to play. It was serious. You had people with their local tattooed on their arms, you know. So these were people who weren't messing around, and our local wanted to make sure that our voice was heard, that we weren't drowned out in some of the much larger and more powerful locals. And so that's what we did. I think we did a good job, and it's something that, I feel honored that I had the privilege to do that in 2024. And that's why I'm running again. I'd like to do that again and make sure that our voice is heard and that we're taken seriously and that we don't back down when people try and shout us down.
Yeah, I think that's a big point. I wish that Maria was here. I'm sure she would not disagree with me. When we were first delegates in 2018, right after we lost our contract, we were a tiny agency. In retrospect, when you go to convention, you realize how diverse AFGE is, and how small the Department of Education is. And so, at that time, they were arguing against having more staff. And I'm like, the Department of Education needs AFGE staff. We need to pay AFGE staff because we don't have a contract to do it all of ourselves. We don't have official time, but we got drowned out. And that's the importance of building this local, increasing our membership. So in 2018, we had about 200 members in the Department of Education. By the time we got to convention 2024, we were over 1,000 strong. So we were able to have more delegates. One of the things that was always disconcerting to me is how diametrically and politically opposed so many of our agencies are, particularly Border Patrol and ICE, when we had ICE at the time, and how Samir had to basically be
Yeah.
my bodyguard because the men at Border Patrol were really trying to come for me when I was arguing for the things that our agency needed. I know, Aleseia, girl, it's crazy. So,
Yeah.
but but those are, I think those there are important thoughts that we bring to the table, and that people don't even educating AFG about what we do at the Department of Education, because unfortunately, even within AFG, they think that we are teachers or they think that we're the ones doing curriculum. And so informing
Mhm.
the people who are representing us, people who are on the news about what we need, that's what we do at conventions. So there are a couple big things I know, we're hearing a lot from members of this local about AFG's stance on the shutdown. There are other things that are probably tried and true to our hearts at the Department of Education. And so I wanted to know what were some things, Aleseia, that you would want us to make resolutions about and get support for the next convention?
I think just based upon the experience I've had thus far with the local, I think one of the biggest things is making sure that um, we get member input prior to, us, I guess, how should we say it? Do you say issuing statements or just
Yep.
going public with some of the things? It's just making sure we survey our members and get their input on some of the issues and things that we feel are important to them as well, so that we make sure we're representing the truth on what they're concerned about. Um, Trying to think of some of the other things. Basically, I think I know me personally from a delegate perspective, because I'm such an advocate and I know I'm not in one of the major roles, it's just surveying the members and just making sure we value their feedback. That's the biggest thing for me with this whole role. Um, I just want to make sure they all feel like their voices are heard when we go to represent them at these conventions. Like Samir said, how things can get heated and all of that, just making sure we have that foundation on what issues we wish to stand on. And I think one time before we discuss the accessibility of like the AFGE forms and such, like our ballots, communication surveys, things of that nature for others to weigh in on. But
Yeah.
I know, like I said, I know from a personal level, it's just making sure voices are heard. I'm big on that, and that we come together as a collective and staying unified when we have to attack these political issues.
Yeah, and that's what we've been trying to do, and when I was the president of this local, making sure to survey our members. I mean, certainly our slate is surveying our members now, asking what they're looking for in leaders. They're looking for experience, they're looking for knowledge. They're not necessarily looking for happy hours. And I think you really do want to make sure that you are meeting the needs of your people. And there's the only way you can do that is by asking the people what their needs are. And, I think on the issue of making statements on a shutdown or otherwise, one of the things that I'd like our delegation to do is to draft a resolution and get support on AFGE national leadership surveying its members before they go on and make statements, because it's one thing if they survey us and everyone's like, hey, most people are saying we need to end a shutdown or what have you, but it's quite another to not ask and then to make those statements. And so I think that's something our delegation should actually bring forth. Certainly if you all are elected delegates and we have our slate on board who will also be delegates, we can try to get support for that and talk to other AFGE agencies. It doesn't mean that we don't stand on something, a certain, stand on a position, but it just makes sure that when we stand on a position, when the leaders that we elect at convention, our national president, our secretary treasurer, and our vice president of women's and fair practice, when they stand on a position, it is an informed position that has been informed by us. And I love that you mentioned the accessibility. One of the feedback we've been getting from our members, particularly in this current election, is that the forms are not altogether accessible. So, we know AFG is running the election. We're so grateful that they are doing that because, um, things got contentious in this local, but we want to make sure that everyone has an ability to participate in the electoral process. Making sure putting a resolution down to make sure that everything that AFG sends out is 508 compliant. Those are the types of changes that are made at convention, that are made at our district caucuses, electing the leaders that are going to support our local. We are fortunate at the last convention. The reason why I'm able to have conversations when I was president with AFG's national leadership is because we supported them. We support them because they were accessible to us. They came to our local meetings. They, asked about what we needed. And even President Kelly wanted to sign our CBA. He was going to sign the CBA when some members of our negotiation team weren't, which is crazy. But to get that support, to get from our national leadership, that's the type of delegation we need. And I'm so glad that you guys have stepped up. Well, I know we don't have that much time before my free Zoom account drops off. But were there any parting words you guys want to give? Alicia, I know you're already on camera.
Sorry, I had it on mute, had my littles. As far as the parting words, I just want to say that, like I said, I know the importance and a lot of frustrations that we've heard is that people just want to make sure their input is valued, their opinions are, and their feedback is heard. And just knowing that that's something I'm passionate about. And Sharia, my experience with you is that you're very open to those type of communications. So it's just letting people know that if that's indeed what they're looking for, then they're looking in the right place.
Yeah, with our slate for sure. And then Samir?
Yeah, I would just say that I would be honored to fight for this local once again. Like I opened with, union membership is something that's very important to me. I believe deeply in the importance of unions. Without unions, we wouldn't have child labor laws. We wouldn't have 40-hour work week. We wouldn't have the weekend. We wouldn't
Or
have
Veterans
works
Day?
wouldn't have Veterans Day. We wouldn't have safety, workplace safety laws.
Yeah.
At one point, if you got injured on the job, you get fired. So we've come a long way, and it's been an uphill battle for a very long time, for over 100 years, and it will continue to be an uphill battle. But as long as we have fighters, we'll continue to make progress. And so that's what I intend on doing.
Yeah. We were all part of this candidates meeting where they went over the membership list, and I was so happy that despite uh, the separations, we've retained very high membership, and I think people see the value. That's because people see the value of union membership, like you said, Samir. People see the value of this local, and I hope in this election that people elect leaders that are going to continue the positive tradition of this local. That when we go into the next convention, we go into the next district caucus, that we are a delegation that commands respect and can get support for the things that our members need. So thank you all so much for being part of this slate. And I hope we can celebrate and start working together again on December 11th.
Likewise. Thanks, Sharia. Thanks,
Bye,
Samir.
Alicia. Bye, Samir. And bye, Maria and Essentia. Bye, everybody.